members and community members, branch members and community members will not be able to join us just because of the time. You know, a lot of folks work. So I'm going to record this. I'm also joined by Miss Rhonda Bennett, who is the complainant, who reached out to the NAACP regarding this matter with the Vacaville Starbucks. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop those in the Q&A box. Our communication chair, Mrs. Mitchell, will be monitoring the box, and when we get to question and answers, you'll be able to ask those questions. Well, she will read off those questions. And so, you know, we called you here to join us for this press conference regarding the Starbucks in Vacaville and Leisure Town. You all know that making a false police report is already a misdemeanor or felony offense in California. However, accountability is lacking for making racially based calls to law enforcement. To address the problem in California, a Bay Area elected official has announced a bill to make it unlawful to fabricate false racial bias emergency reports. The Tri-City NAACP is deeply concerned about an incident involving Ms. Rhonda Bennett, who parked in the vicinity of the Vacaville Leisure Town Starbucks on August 25th, 2018. According to Ms. Bennett, she was a victim of a false 911 call made to the Vacaville Police Department by a Starbucks employee. Mrs. Bennett was waiting for her daughter and goddaughter who had gone into another store in the area. A Starbucks employee exited his car, stared at her, and went into the Starbucks. He later returned to his car, checked his door locks on his car, and stared at her. Within minutes after the employee walked back into Starbucks, 4 Vacaville police cruisers surrounded her car. They asked for Mrs. Bennett's driver's license, which she refused without first knowing the reason for the ask. Another officer perched himself against the right side rear passenger door with his gun drawn. One of the officers had the Starbucks employee who Ms. Bennett saw earlier come out to make an eyewitness identification. The officer peered through her car window and said he guessed it wasn't her. He walked away. Mrs. Bennett learned that the Starbucks employee had made a false 911 call, reporting that 3 Black girls in a black car stole the tip jar from the drive-through window. The girls were smoking weed and believed to be impaired. The nature of the call resulted in 911 dispatching officers to the site. Mrs. Bennett found out from a Starbucks district manager that the theft never occurred. However, the Starbucks corporate office stated that the district manager was mistaken and that the theft did indeed occur. Weeks later, Starbucks corporate released a video of the theft. However, the video is of poor quality and does not show a stamp date, time, or store number. The video shows the same employee yet in different attire and hair and with shorter hair than on the day of the incident. Mrs. Bennett is requesting restitution for the indescribable trauma she has suffered since the incident. The tip jar theft video, in which the police were called to respond on August 25th, 2018. The Starbucks policy regarding 911 regarding calling 911 to report a theft of the tip jar. And so far, these demands have gone unmet. Today, we came to shed light on this incident and also, to just continue to talk about what African Americans endure each day for living Black here in America. We're going to go ahead and open up actually, before we open up to questions, I want to see if Ms. Bennett have anything she would like to add. But before she, say anything, I just want to say that, I got a call from a Vacaville police lieutenant, I believe, and we discussed in length this whole situation, and I shared my concern. And I was under the impression that he'll reach out to Ms. Bennett and see what it is that he could do to assist her. To my knowledge, that had not happened as of yet. I've spoken with Chief Carley, retired Chief Carley, some time ago when Mrs. Bennett first brought this to the Tri-City NACP, and we didn't get any resolution. And I'm assuming during his transition, things got lost in the shuffle and no one followed up with us. However, again, the lieutenant did reach out to me, and still, we don't have any the information that we're requesting. One of the things that concerned me is that, number one, 911, with this culture climate of white individuals feeling that it's okay for them to call 911 because they don't feel Black or brown or certain individuals don't belong in their space, making 911 calls. The 911 dispatch should be trained to see through those calls, to answer questions, to indicate if they need to dispatch police officers. Number two, the information that this Starbucks employee gave them, I'm wondering if that even required for so many officers to descend upon Mrs. Bennett's car with their weapons drawn out, at least with one officer's weapon drawn out. And number three, is the police, Vacaville Police Department and agencies across this country trained to know when they arrive on the scene, what kind of force is needed. And so this is alarming. I personally thank God that Mrs. Bennett, her daughter and goddaughter were able to drive away from this scene, but it's still, this is the first time that the Tri-City NACP had to call this particular story about racial incidents. We even know a third incident when the China, I believe, Asian American who's actually a active airman at Travis Air Force Base, stationed at Travis Air Force Base. That was recently in the news. And so there needs to be a culture change at Starbucks. The CEO issued a statement of the George Floyd, verdict, the verdict in the George Floyd case. We're tired of these corporations or individuals jumping on the bandwagon saying that Black Lives Matter and how they are against, poor treatment of African American or any individual. However, the practices in your store doesn't reflect these statements that you're putting out. And in addition to these statements, the actions of your employees not meeting up with the statements that you're putting out. In addition, your store managers and your corporate office is basically allowing it by continuing, to deny that the incident happened instead of addressing the issue. And so if you really believe that Black Lives Matter, if you really believe that, the incident, George Floyd murder, was, just a horrible tragedy, then your employees need to know that as well. And your employees' actions need to reflect that as well. And so I'm going to give Ms. Bennett an opportunity to share anything that she would like to share. And so this is the second step in the Tri-City NACP's direct action against Starbucks. We issued a press release. This is the press conference. We called a boycott on Starbucks. And then actually we're actually planning a protest to go out in front of the store. And so Starbucks, this is not the first time you heard from us. This is not the last time you're going to hear from us. Your corporation need a culture change. Mrs. Bennett, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, and thank you for bringing it to the light, because that day I could have lost my life because somebody felt uncomfortable about the color of my skin. When the police officer approached my front door, my front window, and asked me for my driver's license, my purse was on the floorboard of the passenger side, which means I have to bend down to reach my purse. That officer in the back of my car wouldn't have known what I was reaching for. And thank God I didn't reach for my purse, because it would have been a very different story if I had. And I want Starbucks to own up to what they know was a false 911 report. Their district store manager even stated that none of their tip jars, either in the store or out of the store, never moved. However, their corporate office is disputing that. And they know it was a false 911 report. Simply just because I was sitting in my car, he felt threatened. And I just want justice. And I wish it would stop. And I'm trying to figure out why the color of our skin makes people so uncomfortable whereas somebody who is not black or brown can walk through the streets with an AR strapped across their chest during a protest, and the National Guards just go past them. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. Nobody sees that. Why? What is it about our skin color that makes them so uncomfortable? I want to ask that employee that. That's all I wanted to do was ask them why. Thank you. And that's all I have to really say right now.
You know, one of the things that Ms. Bennett, touched upon is a concern of mine of why. My question is actually why um, is the African American? Why do we have to cry out a demand for individuals to see our humanity? If you see the humanity in an individual, then these incidents won't happen. And so again, we're calling on Starbucks. We're calling them out. We're seeking justice for Ms. Bennett, and we want to ensure that they provide this tape that they say is evidence of of the tip jar being stolen. And and also we're asking for the Vacaville Police Department to not only present the information, the 911 call, because the tip jar was never stolen, so that wasn't privileged information. So that 911 call and those transcripts, we're demanding that the Vacaville Police Department present those, and we're asking that they hold this individual accountable, because that's the other reason why this continued to happen, because law enforcement is not holding these individuals accountable. 911 dispatchers are not reading through these calls. And so the way the call was put out, why did officers descend upon Mrs. Bennett Carr if they didn't make if this employee didn't make the call towards Ms. Bennett? And if they did just say an African American, were they really the only African Americans there? So we just really have questions about how Vacaville PD, handle these calls, how Vacaville PD, investigate these calls, how Vacaville PD hold individuals accountable for these calls. And so this is not going away. We're calling on our friends, our elected friends in Vacaville, to make sure that Ms. Bennett gets justice in this case. And we're just calling on, again, the Vacaville Police Department to do what they should have done 2 years back in 2018. And so at this time, we're going to open it up for any questions, if there's any questions of anyone who would like to share anything. Be sure to check, type your questions in the Q&A box, opposed to putting it in the chat. We have a question from our membership chair, Mrs. Rosemary Lewis. Her question is the employee who called 911 still employed by Starbucks? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure if Mrs. Bennett knows the answer to that question, but I'm not sure. I am sure that Starbucks know the individual that made the call, and if he is still working, not only this individual, but all individuals at Starbucks across this nation need ongoing training. And if they wasn't employed when these trainings, these diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings are put on place, then when they have new hires, they need to go through the training. Mrs. Bennett, do you know if the employee still works at Starbucks?
I do not know the answer to that question. What I do know is that the corporate is protecting this person's identity, and they've gone through great lengths to keep it private. As far as I know, I'm not sure if they're still employed or not.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Bennett. Any other questions? All right, if there's no more questions, we're going to keep you posted as far as when the protest at this Vacaville Starbucks on Leisure Town is going to take place. And we encourage you, if you're interested in joining us, to reach out to our office at so that we can keep you in the loop and just actually just go through the protocol and procedures of when the Tri-City, when the NAACP actually take direct actions um, as a protest, actual protest. There are some procedures in place that we do, and there's some things that we actually do to make sure that we don't have outside agitators come in, so that we can keep our protests peaceful. Again, if there's nothing else, we want to thank you all for coming out. We want to encourage you to continue to boycott Starbucks. If Starbucks if Starbucks doesn't, respect, our humanity, if Starbucks doesn't respect us as people, then they don't deserve our resources and they don't deserve our support. And so boycott Starbucks until the culture of Starbucks change. If there isn't anything else from our communication chair, Mrs. Mitchell or Miss Rhonda Bennett, looks like we've got another question that came in. J.D. Hatchett. Why did it take 2 years for this to be drawn out? Well, both Mrs. Bennett and myself can answer that. Mrs. Bennett's been working on this, and again, she could speak more to this. Mrs. Bennett's been working on this since the incident, my understanding, since the incident happened. Starbucks corporate office is continuing to, again, protect the individual that made the false 911 call. They continue to say that the tip jar was indeed stolen when it wasn't. And so it's just an uphill battle between the big corporation and Mrs. Bennett. I don't know the exact date when the NACP was brought in the loop, but now that we're in the loop, we're definitely going to shine a light on this darkness. Mrs. Bennett, you want to add anything to Mr. Hatchett, I believe's question, J.D. Hatchett's question?
Yes, the reason why it's taken so long, I've given Starbucks many opportunities to make it right, to address that issue. When the store district manager had gotten back to me, the first thing he said to me, and I've never met him, he said, "Mrs. Bennett, I want to first apologize to you as a Black man, but none of our tip jars ever moved. None inside the store or in the drive-through that day." And I believe him because I was just sitting in my car, people watching. I saw every person of color that came through in that vicinity, because when you're in a predominantly white area, you tend to notice people who look like you. And the caller also told 911 that the girls were smoking weed and driving impaired. I never seen anybody smoking weed. I never seen any other Black girls in a Black car. Starbucks continued and we have tried to work with them. I know that the NACP has tried to work with them, and they were told by the VP of operations that, oh, it occurred, and they pretty much brushed us off. And so that's why we're coming forward now. We've given them every opportunity to fess up. And I'm not going to let this go, because that false 911 report could have ended my life and put others in jeopardy. And I've asked the Vacaville Police Department for any proof that the crime occurred, and I was just given the runaround. So that's why it's taken so long.
And again, we're continuing to get what I wouldn't say the runaround, but I was told by the Vacaville police officer department representative that reached out to me that he or someone from the agency would be getting in touch with Miss Bennett on yesterday. And again, to my understanding, that no one reached out to her to either provide the information she's requesting from Vacaville Police BPD, or to explain why they can't, provide that information. And as Miss Bennett said, she's not going to let it go, and the NAACP is not going to let it go either.
And if I could say one more thing, when I read the statement from the CEO, Kevin Johnson of Starbucks, and what he says about the Black community, the African American community, he says, "We see you, we hear you, we're hurting with you, and we're there with you." If he truly believes that, then he needs to make this right. Tell the truth. You can't just make those statements about the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin verdict and tell our community that you stand with us when you're hiding this and you're lying about what happened to me. Do the right thing so you can move forward and fix it. Don't sweep it under the rug just because what happened to me was what months after you closed all your stores to provide the racial bias training. The only reason I think that they did not want to address it is because it would be very embarrassing. Only after 90 days or so, you have an employee do this after you just closed all your stores for training. I think that's one of the motivations for them not to work this out.
Thank you. And you're more than welcome, Mr. Hatcher. Thank you for your question. Any other questions?
I have one question, and
Yes.
maybe you've already answered it, but when 911 received the call, were they told that the theft involves 3 African-American girls who were in a car smoking weed? Is that the actual call they received?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I'm asking that because when the police got there, they didn't see 3 black girls in a car. They saw you. So that's why I was wondering, why did they surround your car when the report did not say that it was only one person? It was 3 black girls. So that confuses me why the law enforcement officers behaved that way.
One of the police cruisers that was first to drive into the parking lot saw my daughter walk away from the car, which she had just came back to tell me that it would be a little much longer while I had to wait. So as they seen her walk away from the car, one Vacaville police cruiser sped up so fast that he almost hit my daughter with his police cruiser. So he saw 2 African-American women in the parking lot sitting in the black car.
And so my concern again is this, the need for additional training. So if the call was actually for a tip jar and that there were individuals smoking weed in the car, is that call for force like this, or was it only because they were African-American, they were African-American women or African-American? So did that really call? My understanding is that he didn't say there's a robbery in progress, we're being held at gunpoint. Yeah, I could see a response like that if the call was that, but a tip jar was stolen. You know, it just concerns me how, again, African-Americans have to plead and beg for folks to see our humanity. And again, there's ongoing training that needs to happen. We have individuals, elected individuals, again, in Vacaville that we're calling on. You know, one of the reasons why the last 4 years, you know, our country has been divided by hate speech and by hate violence is because people are being quiet. People aren't using their influence. And so as we continue to move our communities forward, Sassoon, Fairfield, and Vacaville, we're calling on elected officials, even elected officials that we've supported and got in office, to demand justice for Mrs. Bennett and for so many others that's been racially profiled by not only Starbucks, but for all the businesses throughout our Tri-City area. So it looks like we don't have any other questions. I'm going to go ahead and we got give you 2 minutes back. We're just at 10:28. And so again, I want to thank you all for coming out. Again, if you're interested in joining us for our peaceful protest, it's coming up very soon. Please reach out to our office, and then we'll give you more information about our process, procedures, and policies when we go out and do a protest. Thank you all. I appreciate your time. Grace, mercy, and peace to you.